टैरिफ्स लगाए जा रहे हैं और इसका की असर होएगा। क्या ये उस प्रोटेक्शनिज्म का एक सिम्टम है? क्या ये उसका एक नतीजा है? क्या इसको उसी नजर विच देखना चाहिए? अमेरिका मे बी उन कंट्रीज विच है जिन्हां विच एक प्रोटेक्शनिज्म जिहड़ा है सब तो घट है। इस वेले इस प्रोटेक्शनिज्म की की लोड़ पई है जो इसलिए सारी टैरिफ्स लगाई जा रही हैं, विच वी अंडरस्टैंड कि अप्रैल 2 के बाद ज्यादा इनैक्ट होंगी। Would you put it under that umbrella of protectionism that I just mentioned?
Do we need them? Especially with the car industry and car manufacturing, but the parts are made in Canada, assembled in Mexico, and then sold in the US. This is where the administration is stuck at this point, because they are talking about 100 billion a year that they are going to earn through tariffs.
How do you view this protectionism, this regime of tariffs going to work out in the area of agriculture?
The current situation, we have asked other countries that this is how it's going to work. We are going to give it to you, but at a certain price. If you want to buy it from us, it will be the certain price. Canada doesn't need it, but hypothetically, certain countries have started to look at other countries to buy. We might be losing buyers who will go to other countries that have overproduction of crops. So the world looks up to us. It's not that we are on a level playing field on this.
The way forward is थोड़ा बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। मैं थोड़ा होस्ट हरजोत से। पिछले हफ्ते ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ ਦੀ, ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਵਾਰ ਦੀ, ਔਰ ਇਸ ਹਫਤੇ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਜਾਰੀ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਸ ਸਾਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟ ਸਿਚੁਏਸ਼ਨ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੀਏ ਕਿ ਯੂਐਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਜਾਰਜ ਬੁਸ਼ 3 ਈਵਲਸ ਵੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸਨ। ਉਹ ਸੀਗੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਸ਼ਨਿਜ਼ਮ, ਆਈਸੋਲੇਸ਼ਨਿਜ਼ਮ ਤੇ ਨੇਟਿਵਿਜ਼ਮ। ਆਈਸੋਲੇਸ਼ਨਿਜ਼ਮ, ਨੇਟਿਵਿਜ਼ਮ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਫਸਟ ਦਾ ਇਸ ਲਈ ਨਾਰਾ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦਾ ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਉਸੇ ਲਈ ਇਕਨੋਮਿਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਕ ਲੈਗ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਸ਼ਨਿਜ਼ਮ। ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਸਾਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, क्या ये उस प्रोटेक्शनिज्म का एक सिम्टम है? क्या ये उसका एक नतीजा है? क्या इसको उसी नजर विच देखना चाहिए? और की एक्सपीरियंसेस रेन इस मुल्क दे पहला इस प्रोटेक्शनिज्म नाल, क्योंकि ये प्रोटेक्शनिज्म पहली बार नहीं हो रहा। जद ये मुल्क बनया सीगा तद आपां देखिया प्रोटेक्शनिज्म, जद सिविल वॉर हुई सी उस तो बाद असीं देखिया प्रोटेक्शनिज्म, 1930s जब ग्रेट डिप्रेशन होया है उस तो बाद मुल्क ने इस प्रोटेक्शनिज्म दे नाल एक्सपेरिमेंट किया। हमेशा ये जिहड़ा प्रोटेक्शनिज्म है बहुत ज्यादा सक्सेसफुल नहीं रहा है, बट फ्रॉम टाइम टू टाइम इसकी नीड भी रही है, इसने सर्व भी किया है। और ऐसा नहीं है कि ये दुनिया विच पहली बार हो रहा है या सिर्फ अमेरिका ही करता है, सारी दुनिया करती है, सारे ने अपनी इंडस्ट्रीज को प्रोटेक्ट किया है। ऑन द अदर हैंड अमेरिका मे बी उन कंट्रीज विच है जिन्हां विच एक प्रोटेक्शनिज्म जिहड़ा है सब तो घट है। इस वेले इस प्रोटेक्शनिज्म की की लोड़ पई है? क्या इसकी वजह यह है कि 1970s 80s 90s के बाद जिहड़ी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इस मुल्क तो चली गई है, क्या उसका डिस्ट्रेस जिहड़ी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन वो फील कर रही है? इसदी करके वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग वापस लेना चाहते हैं, इस करके आ चीज़ां सारी यूज की जा रही हैं, टैरिफ्स लगाए जा रहे हैं और इसका की असर होएगा? इसनू समझण लई अज असी फिर इनवाइट किया है साडे जियोपॉलिटिकल एक्सपर्ट, फॉर्मर हॉफस्ट्रा यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोफेसर मनदीप सिंह मल्होत्रा जी। मनदीप जी तुहाडा बहुत बहुत स्वागत है।
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
मनदीप जी जियोपॉलिटिक्स दे एक्सपर्ट हैगे, इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड दे एक्सपर्ट हैगे। मनदीप जी सब तो पहला असी लास्ट वीक भी टैरिफ्स की गल कीती सी, ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ as we go along this administration clarity ਹੋਰ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਈ aims ਕੀ ਹਨ ਕਿਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੋ ਇਸਲੇ ਸਾਰੀ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ ਲਗਾਈ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹਨ which we understand ਕਿ April 2 ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ enact ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ would you put it under that umbrella of protectionism that I just mentioned?
Very valid question, and you have picked up most of the points. How the US economy and the country has gone through protectionism by imposing trade tariffs and more, I would say, duties so that the goods coming into the country are not just coming in, it should come in as we need them, because there's a very thin line there. So looking about and talking about the tariffs in the last 2 months that we have been talking about, that's what being imposed by the government. But still the question remains, do we need them? Because after NAFTA was implemented in the early 90s, especially with the car industry and car manufacturing, the whole industry got distributed between Canada, US, and Mexico. So there is a saying that what do we do about BMW made in South Carolina? Are we going to tax them higher than Ford, which is an American company, but the parts are made in Canada, assembled in Mexico, and then sold in the US? So we have come and over the point of tariffs, but now we have come down to thinner points. How are we going to put taxes and tariffs on an American company as compared to a German company or to a Japanese company with a base in Tennessee? This is where the administration is stuck at this point, because they're talking about 100 billion a year that they are going to earn through tariffs. But in the whole triangle of tariffs, where would this money go? It'll just go to the government's exchequer, because the buyer is going to pay the tariff amount. The seller will get the tariff amount, but who will really get to keep the 25% increase in tariff? That will be the government. So it's a losing proposition to the buyer and to the seller, but the winner is the government. So that's where we are looking at how the tariff money that's coming in will go towards the exchequer.
Mandeep ji, generally speaking, ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਰੀ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਦਾ whether it's domestic or it's international, I think ਜਿਹੜਾ aim ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ comfort of the end user, the consumer. ਉਸਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ competition ਮਿਲੇ, ਉਸਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਸਸਤੀ ਮਿਲਣ because of competition, right? ਆਹੀ government ਦਾ aim ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ to encourage competition in the market, to ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਟਰਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਤੋੜਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ at some stage, ਜਿਹੜੀ monopolies ਹਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੋੜਨ ਦਾ ਪਰਪਸ ਆਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਜ਼ਿਊਮਰ ਹੈ ਉਸਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਮਿਲਣ, ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਚੋਇਸ ਮਿਲੇ ਔਰ ਉਸ ਕੰਪੀਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਸਸਤੀਆਂ ਹੋਣ. The benefit of the government should not be the primary target of a trade policy. Is that fair to say?
Again, the government has certain data that we don't have, but the whole purpose of these tariffs, I think, to bring the rest of the countries to the drawing table again and renegotiate what they are charging American car companies to get into their economies, be it India, be it Japan, be it South Korea, be it Europe. And as we know, we are one of the lowest tariff charging countries. I think so. If we total up everything, we charge close to 1.5% of total. In the last 3 months, it has gone up to 8% of the total tariff. Whereas other countries are charging us 100%, 50%, 250% for our car companies to go into their countries. So are we trying to look for a medium ground? That's a question for us even to look at, because, for example, Ferrari this morning answered for the 25% being imposed on Europe. Ferrari said, we will reduce the car price by 10%, but the buyer will have to pay the 15%. So we are in the middle somewhere. But that 25% is out there, and Ferrari will make 10% less. The seller and the buyer will pay 15% higher. Now, who benefits? It's a negotiating tool as far as we look at it, because I don't think US is very keen on imposing these kind of tariffs for the longer run.
मनदीप जी, इन सारी गल्लां नूं अगर ਅਸੀਂ थोड़ी industry or sector this specific समझिए, I think that would be more helpful. Now let's talk agriculture. How do you view this protectionism, this regime of tariffs going to work out in the area of agriculture?
As we all know, we are one of the larger producers of crop, for example, soybean to wheat in the world. And we don't consume and use it all up. And whatever we have extra left, we try to distribute it around the world. Either we try to sell it or we try to give as aid so that we look good as a soft power around the world. And that was being done through US aid, as we know. And it was not all free distribution under US aid also. It was, okay, we'll give you, let's say, 3%. That was the number that I read. 3% will give you as a good gesture, but the rest will charge you a certain minimum point to a limit that we can get a profit out of that. And our farmers were happy, because once the crop is sold, they could go to the next cycle of growing that crop rather than storing it in warehouses and wait for the next year to sell it again. But with the current situation, we have asked other countries that this is how it's going to work. We are going to give it to you, but at a certain price. If you want to buy it from us, it will be the certain price. And if you have quotas and we have taxes on this, China, Mexico, Canada doesn't need it, but hypothetically, certain countries have started to look at other countries to buy, for example, from Australia or from Argentina. So instead of benefiting, we might be losing buyers who will go to other countries that have overproduction of crops. And these are need-based crops. We are not talking about cash crops at this point.
How is the administration thinking that it's going to benefit the US consumer or the producer?
That's a big question mark.
Okay.
Because we don't realize how protectionism is going to help our crops when the other countries are going to consume it, and they're need-based. They are not going to consume it as a luxury. They need it. There is hunger in the world, there is famine in the world, and we have been one of the biggest contributors to the global economy to remove these issues in the world. So the world looks up to us. It's not that we are on a level playing field on this.
You know, we have this example of soybean from the last administration. We used to export soybean, and China, they just went to Brazil. They started looking for newer markets they can get things from. एक और ਜਿਹੜੀ important ਗੱਲ ਬੜੀ important, ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਦੱਸੋ ਸਾਨੂੰ, as we said in the beginning, 70s, 80s, 90s ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਨੂਫੈਕਚਰਿੰਗ ਸੀ ਇਸ ਮੁਲਕ ਵਿੱਚ, ਉਹ ਇਸ ਮੁਲਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਗਈ ਹੈ, ਸਾਰੇ ਵੈਸਟ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਗਈ ਹੈ. These developed economies have progressed more towards service industry. I don't know if progress is the right word, but at least they have moved more towards the service industry, more than 65% of their economy. So मैं ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਜਾਣਨਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ बेसिकली मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सारी बाहर गई है, ये सारा ਜਿਹੜਾ एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जो कर रही है, ਅਸੀਂ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ, क्या उसकी जो एज अ पॉपुलिस्ट कोशिश ਜਿਹੜੀ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਉਹ ਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਨੂਫੈਕਚਰਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਵਾਪਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਈਏ ਇਸ ਮੁਲਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗਾ ਕਿਆ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ is that the right way and is it even worth it ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਇਸ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂਫੈਕਚਰਿੰਗ ਕਿਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਰੰਟ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਏਮ ਹੈ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਨੂਫੈਕਚਰਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਮੁਲਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਪਸ ਲਿਆਈ ਜਾਏ do you see that being the aim of the administration and do you think ਕਿ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇਹ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ ਵਧਾਏ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਜਾਂ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਵਾਰ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ is that the right way of bringing the manufacturing back and will it lead to manufacturing coming back?
It's a very good and valid question, but let's see how the whole thing opens up, because if we need to bring manufacturing back, we can definitely ask certain companies to push their base into America. We don't have to impose tariffs. We can request, why don't we bring it back? And these are the benefits we can give you. But the biggest question of manufacturing is, which manufacturing do we want? Mm-hmm. Do we want steel? Do we want garments, textiles? Do we need automobiles? Do we need making tires? Do we need making silicon chips, computers, phones? What do we need? We have to be very specific. As for example, steel was the first industry to leave America, and we were the steel capital of the world. Steel went out. Then came textiles. In the 90s, I think we opened up the quota system for textiles. Before that, every country had a certain quota they could supply to us. And we lost textiles to the world because it was really inexpensive to produce in certain countries. Then came computers. They left the country to be produced out. Then came the service sector. We even started letting our jobs go out, because what a salary here would bring you 100,000 worth of work, we could get it done in XYZ country for 20,000. And the corporations made a better profit, and we see that turn it into the stock market. Now, what do we need back? This administration will, I think, so come up very soon with the tariff system. What's the tariff on textiles? If they say, okay, there's no tariff on textiles, nobody's going to come back. If they say it's 100%, they will probably try to come back in. A good example, Levi jeans, 501, under the quota system, because quota system was very strong under the textile industry. Europe could only import, or I would say the customs duty on 2 pair of jeans going into Europe were allowed. If you bought a 3rd pair of jeans in America and took it to Europe, they had to pay customs duty. And this was before 94. Till they liberalized it, they say, okay, now we can have a free flow. So we went from protectionism and protecting our sectors to opening up the economies, and this is all comparison in the first world, the G7, the developed world. And today again, we're talking about as America on protecting our industry, not realizing that this industry had gone out 30-40 years out, and we are only importing them. Are we also going to look at the computer industry coming back, or the phone manufacturing coming back? Because that's where the world is at today. Are we asking Samsung, are we asking iPhone to bring their companies in? But 3 years back, if you look at the Chinese company Huawei, we asked them to leave our borders. So this is going to be coming more clearer with this government going forward and telling us what exactly is the path. Because right now, the buzzword is tariff. And it entails so much. And by the time I think everybody will understand that how it's going to affect every sector, it'll be years and years.
So Mandeep ji, जो ਹਾਲੇ ਤੱਕ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੇ ਅਨਾਉਂਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਜੋ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੰਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਅਨਾਉਂਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਕਿਆ ਉਹ ਨਾਈਕੀ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਲਾਂਟਸ ਵਾਪਸ ਲਿਆਓ, ਕਿਆ ਉਹ ਐਪਲ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਲਾਂਟਸ ਵਾਪਸ ਲਿਆਓ, ਔਰ ਇਜ਼ ਇਟ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੇਸਿਕ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਅਗਰ ਲੈਟਸ ਸੇ ਕੁਝ ਮੈਨੂਫੈਕਚਰ ਵੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਰॉ ਮਟੀਰੀਅਲ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ, ਸਟੀਲ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ, ਰਾਈਟ? ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ is it targeting those raw material industries first? Are we waiting for more tariffs? Where are we at right now?
Again, a very valid question. We do not know as of yet because the whole buzzword for the last 2 months has been tariffs. And we have yet to see them getting implemented, which we are talking about will get implemented very soon, next month. And then we will know what is the power of the consumer who can afford to pay further 10% or 25%, because that has to be our purchasing power parity. Can our consumer afford to buy that price? And if our consumer is unwilling to pay that price, of course, we will see the numbers that we are talking about of making a profit more towards the government exchequer will not show that number, because till this point, there have been vague numbers that from the car industry and tariffs on the car industry will make around 100 billion in a year estimate from what the sales were last year. But let's see if we continue with that kind of buying power with even 25% higher tariffs on that same product.
But then again we go to the same question, एक गवर्नमेंट ने अपना रेवेन्यू क्रिएट करता है, अगर वो रेवेन्यू क्रिएट करदी है ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਟੈਕਸਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਔਰ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਟੈਕਸਸ ਕੱਟ ਕਰ ਦਿਆਂਗੀ ਬਟ ਇਹ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੀ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ ਤੋਂ, ਬਟ ਦੈਨ ਅਗੇਨ ਇਟ ਗੋਜ਼ ਔਨ ਟੂ ਅਸ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਮਹਿੰਗੀ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਪਈ ਹੈ, 10,000 ਮਹਿੰਗੀ, 20,000 ਮਹਿੰਗੀ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਐਸ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨ ਐਸ ਕੰਜ਼ਿਊਮਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ?
Nationalism and patriotism towards your country. You're paying towards the exchequer.
But are we the beneficiary? अगर सानू वो चीज महंगी मिलती पी है, अगर मेरी जेब विचों $10 ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਟੈਕਸ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ, $10 ਬਚਾ ਕੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਟੈਕਸ ਔਰ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਹੈ ਮੈਨੂੰ $100 ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਦੇਣੇ ਪੈ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮਹਿੰਗੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ, so have I benefited?
Okay, if we divide the sectors, let's say we talk about textiles.
Ji.
Textiles, we will benefit because we don't manufacture. Whatever we get, we are going to wear it. Car industry is important because we have 3 car manufacturers who are here. It's been talked about, they will get more business because their cars will not be expensive because they are produced domestically as compared to other cars which we are importing. Now, which are the cars we are importing? I think so it's just 2 or 3 brands, because we have BMW here, we have Mercedes here, we have Toyota here, Nissan here. Most of the brands are here. And that was, again, the biggest manufacturing dilemma. Like Ford is an American company, but spare parts are made in Canada. It's assembled in Mexico, sold in America. Now, how are we going to play that card if the product goes to Mexico, comes back from Mexico, it's 25% there. If it goes to Canada, comes from Canada, it's 25% here. So the car, even an American company, is now 50% higher. So that's the calculation which the government will have to come out and explain. How are they going to play this? Because as we know, this was the NAFTA treaty, and where they could easily cross borders without paying any taxes and tariffs. But now NAFTA has been taken out, doesn't exist. Now we have another tariff of 25%, and it will be nice to watch what happens when they implement it. How they're going to say, Ford, you will not pay this, but BMW, Mercedes, Toyota, you will have to pay it. And then they will say, it's a choice. Do they want to be in this market or not? But then they can leave it for the American companies, which in the 70s, we had imposed the same kind of tariffs on Japanese cars so that we could protect American companies. But we could not protect them because the quality of the Japanese cars were so high. We can see it today in the global world. The top 3 car companies are Japanese. We even protected our car industry, but we could not compete on quality or fuel efficiency. So there are a lot of other factors that will come to play out after the tariffs are imposed. Which car can compete with whom? And let's see how it plays out.
जी और why there's apprehension क्योंकि tariffs ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ previous experiences reign, as you said, whether it was under the Reagan administration protecting the car industry and all, and even after that Smoot-Hawley tariff act after 1930s की depression ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਸਨੂੰ defeat ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਉਸਦੇ outcome ਨੂੰ, did this serve their purpose? We don't know, and the experience has been negative, but let's see how it's done. ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ bada important sector hai, and which might be more confusing than anything else in the present context, is the service industry. ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ The Way Forward। The Way Forward ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ। ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ, ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਸੈਕਟਰ ਦੀ। ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਸੈਕਟਰ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਅਗੇਨ ਬੜਾ ਕਨਫਿਊਜ਼ਿੰਗ ਹੈ, ਬੜਾ ਕੰਪਲੈਕਸ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਊਟਸੋਰਸਿੰਗ ਇੰਨੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਨਵੋਲਵਮੈਂਟ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੇ ਜਿਹੇ ਕੰਮ ਵਿੱਚ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ how is the thing going to play out?
Very valid question. The service sector, as we know, is very much service oriented, very much dependent on the technology sector, which we saw a very good boom in the 2000. And since we have realized most of our jobs in this sector started to leave American borders around 2005, 2006. And we found areas where we could have a person sitting across the world working for 1/10 of the salary of an American citizen.
Gee.
Over a period of time, the financial sector, the healthcare sector were the first ones to take these jobs out. Then came the insurance sector. And slowly, it took us 10 years for these jobs to go out because we found other countries which were better off in coding, in providing customer service, and doing our back-end work for replacing the American worker. And it's been going on since. There has been no stopping of jobs leaving America. Our bigger companies, not to name many, but have gone across the world and set up the second biggest head office, headquarters, to get the development done. To the point, the new sector that has come, artificial intelligence, most of those jobs have also gone out. Now, the question will remain, but those jobs cannot be brought back with either tariffs or quotas or anything else we know that trade disruption can bring back. That's the most important sector we have to be thinking about because that's where your know-how sits for the future. That's where the back-end development works for our service sector and the banking and so on and so forth. But bringing a job back in manufacturing or making a shirt and a pant is not something which is going to enhance the American dream or the American boom that's going to go.
Gee.
If we look at how to bring those jobs back, would be paying them a fair wage or not to let people from those countries come here and work or bring the jobs back. That's the biggest confusion, and I think so this administration need to look towards that area where knowledge base is more important.
Mandeep ji, the biggest issue is that this whole system, this whole scenario has been created by none other than America itself. So इस करके सारी चीज को थोड़ा डिसमेंटल करना और I don't know if it's a knee jerk reaction in 30 days की की हो गया है, because we have seen, we have studied concepts like comparative advantage. Asi jante there was a time that places like Boston, they used to be, hub of manufacturing, leather works. Aaj nahi hai, something else has replaced. I don't know if we still want to look in a global fashion कि आप की कर सकते हैं कि नहीं कर सकते, but the reality remains कि सारी दुनिया दी जेडी countries हैगियां, सारी दुनिया दी जेडी economies हैं, same level ते नहीं हैं. इस करके we see or intentions भी, if we say they don't all play fair, we can be oblivious to that. And कुछ concepts ਜਿਹੜੇ मैं चाहूंगा कि ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਥੋੜੇ ਸੇ ਸਮਝਾਓ, which have traditionally been part of trade wars, tariffs, things which you have mentioned, quotas, subsidies. Sanu daso, how do they work?
You brought in a very fair point that everything is not fair with all countries. Very well accepted, and the world knows that, because we all know what America can do, none of those countries can do. That's a purchasing power. Mm-hmm. That's the power of dollar. That's the power of our printing of the dollar, our value of treasuries, who can buy. Now, if we start comparing countries, what America can do, there is no competition to us because we have the strong dollar. For example, what South Africa can do, India cannot do. What India can do, South Africa cannot do. So we have access to both the countries. We can get gold from South Africa. We can get IT services from India, and we benefit. So that's how we have been functioning. We have, you used another word, comparative advantage. Another very valid theory that has gone in the world by Ricardo. He said, if you can make Boeing and make a plane, and you have a competitive advantage in that, the rest of the world doesn't have to make a plane and invest so much money and take a subsidy from the government and so on and so forth. So in this world, for the longest period ever, we have two plane companies, Boeing and Airbus. They both started with government subsidies because no one person could invest so much amount of money, and they run the same way. If another country needs a plane, either one sells it to them. Imagine in 200 countries, we just have two plane companies on comparative advantage. So the world has accepted our leadership in all areas. But when we decide that we can have this done fairly inexpensive and a little better, or a little, we cannot compare on quality, but that's when we send that product out. So everything that we have been doing has been making the world go around very well. Nobody has complained much about it. And if there are issues we had with 707 or 737, it came back to Boeing. They looked at it, they fixed it, and we are back in business. So these words, these little hiccups will be there in the world, but the rest of the world is very, I would say, they look at US with very positive eyes. But when their economies are very small, that they only produce, for example, wheat, and they put a tariff of 400% hypothetically, they're just trying to protect their wheat industry, because if we go and say, hey, we take it for free, they will go to the WTO headquarters and say, hey, this is called dumping. They're just throwing wheat here. Same thing happened with steel coming from China. They had such large companies making steel, then they just brought to the shores of America and said, here, take it. And our companies are complaining, how do we compete on pricing?
Mandeep ji, ਤੁਸੀਂ term use ਕੀਤੀ dumping. ਥੋੜਾ ਦੱਸੋਗੇ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ? What is dumping?
Oh, dumping is also a very important part, but very rarely used in the world between countries, because most of the trade is not a war. I think so. It's more or less a media word, because trade is always negotiated. And if it doesn't help or work with the negotiation, then one country will say, you are trying to give me something I don't need. And like if US is producing steel at, let's say, $100 a ton, or whatever hypothetical price you can put, and China says, you know what, I can give it to you at $40 a ton. here, take it. Now, we didn't negotiate the price as countries, but China says, I have it, why don't you take it? In good gesture, they might send it across, but our steel producers who produce at $100 would say, what do we do? Because nobody will buy at $100. Everybody would buy at $40. Now that becomes a dumping kind of a scenario that you're forcing the local producer now to produce or reduce their profits down to $40 to compete with the person who's dumping that product. And this goes on when the relationship is little sour. It doesn't go all the time. It doesn't happen all the time, but it only happens when we decide, let's see what their economy can be when we dump something on them.
Mandeep ji, we always hear this कि भाई जेडे बड़े मुल्क हैगे, अमीर मुल्क हैगे, they created all these things, WTO, GATT, ITO for their benefit. But let's see it from this point of view. ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਵੱਡੀ economies ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, ਵੱਡੀ companies ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, they can afford this dumping. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ market local product ਹੈਗਾ, these big companies have the deep pockets to bring down their prices ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ competition ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏ. They can do it to any country, any company in the world. If there is a mechanism which has prevented that, isn't that mechanism there to protect the small player?
That's why GATT was not a very successful model as compared to WTO. Most of the third world countries, or I would say developing countries, went to the WTO more often than anyone else. Because whatever they could feel that this bigger player or a bigger economy or a bigger country is trying to do is not good for us. For example, when WTO came out, all the European, Western world and America went around the world and asked every country to open up their borders, irrespective of what they were producing and what they were selling. We just wanted to put our brand, our product in that country. And if you see, most of the countries that opened up were in the 70s, late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And most of the Asian model was based on two, import substitution or export orientation. And they were trying to contain and sustain a little bit what the first world wanted them to do, because we had the products, we were mature. We wanted them to open up to our manufacturing, buy our jeans, buy our t-shirts, buy our Nikes, buy our sneakers. If you look at India's liberalization was all about opening up their markets to the Western world. And it worked out very well. It worked out very well for Thailand too on rice. But at the end of the day, the whole rice industry got decimated because they were given for free, their prices came down, they stopped producing. When the aid went out, they had to produce. They could not even produce. Same thing, but Japan resisted and they stabilized their economy, but they also got affected with the treasuries because their interest rates never came up, but they got hit on the currency sector.
There's so much more to talk about. The time does not permit. We bring these issues because we see that we might be at an inflection point. The world sees change. Second World War the baad ek world order create hoya. 80s there was something else that was brought, and these big economies, big countries see what works and what doesn't work. As we discuss, ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ manufacturer ਬਾਹਰ ਚਲਾ ਗਿਆ, service sector ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, outsourcing age. What is left for the average American? Are they trying to bring it back? And is it the right way of bringing it back? And क्या वो सिर्फ semiconductors and artificial intelligence इन चीज़ां दे ऊपर monopoly अपनी रखनी चाहेंगे, या they would like to bring बिल्कुल प्लास्टिक भी ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਵਾਪਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡੇਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਸਭ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ. ਬਟ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਕਲੋਜ਼ਲੀ ਵੇਖਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ. We would know of administration's intention more in the coming days ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿਨ ਸੈਕਟਰਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਇਹ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ ਲਗਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਲਗਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੰਟੈਂਟ ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਚੱਲੇਗਾ। ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਿਰ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ। ਜਿਉਂ ਇਹ ਡਿਵੈਲਪਮੈਂਟਸ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਰਹਿਣਗੀਆਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਵਾਂਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਹੋਰ ਸਮਝ ਹੋਏ। ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ।